Welcome. We're here today to talk about the Vial of Life, a program through the Brevard County Fire Rescue. My name is Karina Savella. I work with the Brevard Community Healthcare Coalition. I'm a volunteer with Community Services League of Brevard. I'm an insurance agent, a board certified patient advocate. You can read the different things I do there on the screen. You'll see my email. This will be about a 30-minute presentation. You can skip through various parts. It's not going to tell you how to fill out a form, because if you know about the Vial of Life, it's a form which provides information to the emergency management when there's a crisis or an emergency. What we're going to talk about is why you put this information together and why it's important and what the information should be, because sometimes it's not very clear. Like I said, it's 30 minutes. We'll get started and try to get done right on time. Okay, this is what the Vial of Life looks like. It's a little plastic container about 2-3 inches square, round, and you put it on the front shelf or the door of your refrigerator. They're not going to go rummaging through your refrigerator, so you need to keep it at the front of the top shelf or on the door where it's visible. You're going to put a sticker on your front window or door, and put a sticker on your refrigerator. This works. This is pretty common standard practice. If you know anything about DNRs, if you have a DNR or a living will, healthcare surrogate, all that information they've always told you over the years, put it in an envelope and put it on your refrigerator, because the EMTs will look there in case no one's there to answer questions in a crisis and 911 is called. So with this COVID-19 situation we've been going through, you'll find that nobody's allowed to go into the ER with their loved one. Something happens, you're at the door, you're left there because they don't want people in the facilities. And if your loved one is unconscious or has dementia, is unable to communicate in some way, they were just, the hospital is going to have the information they have, and maybe call somebody. It was really quite hair-raising. But if they had a Vial of Life, your loved one's information could go right in with the EMTs, and they would have most of the information that they need. During an emergency, your mind blanks, and you'd be surprised, but it does. So they're going to ask you questions, and you're just not going to be able to think clearly, because obviously you're in a crisis, and a giant crisis can be a regular crisis if you're able to access the information that you need. So here's what the form looks like. It's 2 pages or 1 page, and it's front and back. You can have husband and wife on the same piece of paper or on separate pages. And you're going to see here there's different sections, and we're going to go through each of these in detail. If you would like a copy of this form sent to you, or if you want a Vial of Life, you saw my email at the beginning and phone number. My website, you can contact me and I can get the information to you, or at least email you the form if you don't want the actual vial to put it in and you just want to use the envelope method. Just be sure it says EMTs or 911 information. Go on the web in your community and see what is the standard practice in your area. So the first section we're going to talk about is the personal information. This is the name, address, birth, sex, weight, race, language, religion, social security number. I'm kind of iffy on that. Your primary doctor's name and phone number. That's your primary care physician, and whether you're a veteran or not. If you go to the VA and you have a VA ID, one of the things I recommend is put your driver's license and your VA ID and maybe a copy of your insurance cards. Just make a copy, put them all on a copy machine. Most people have a copy machine nowadays, and just make a copy of those. Because if you're a veteran, then your veterans doctor's name might be on your card. If you have behavioral health issues, or you have someone who manages your medication for psych issues, and you see a psychologist or someone like that routinely, and they are on, really managing your case, you should put their name there too. And you can put a little arrow and write their information on the back. So your primary care physician, if you're a veteran, and if you have a veteran ID card, put the number on there right here, or make a copy of that in your driver's license and put it right here in this vial. In case of emergency. So here we have two names. I recommend having a local name and a name that's not so local. Because if there is a disaster or an emergency, like if you're in a car accident and your emergency contact is your wife or your friend, and you're both in a car accident together, or you're both in a fire, or you're both in whatever the situation is, well, that's not going to do much good. So you want to put your healthcare surrogate, if you have one, here, and maybe someone out of town. Now, the someone out of town may or may not be someone who can make decisions, and but it might be someone who knows who to call. So let's say you're in Florida, you've retired, everybody in your family who has your healthcare surrogate, your POA, your living will, all that stuff is your relative in New York or Colorado or North Carolina. Well, that's not going to do you much good, but you can put the name of a neighbor who has all those phone numbers in an envelope that's sealed, and when she gets a call that says, "Hi, you're the emergency contact for Joe or Susie," they're going to open that envelope and call the people that need to be called. And so don't think of this as only the person that's going to handle your crisis, but it might be the person who's going to contact the person that handles your crisis. So think about that, because we all have complicated lives now, with blended families. Couples are together for 30 years, but they're not married. That can cause issues when, you've got other people's children and they're not they have no rights in terms of the law to speak on your behalf, because you have two separate families. So I think you get the gist of it. Put a name here that's going to answer the phone, who's going to be available, and who knows who to call. Or put the numbers here for the people who to call. But always think about, don't put the person that's always with you 90% of the time. Okay, the next section is the insurance coverage. You can make copies of your cards, like I talked about. You can fit your Medicare card, your insurance card, your driver's license, your VA card, all on a single page, or you can write those policy names and information on here. Your care team. Do you have a guardian? If you do, put the name here. If you don't, cross it out and put who you have. You have a healthcare surrogate. Do you have a DNR? Do you have a living will? Where are they? Do you have an attorney? Who's your DPOA, your financial decision maker? Your pet sitter. Do you have pets? Who's the pet sitter? Who do they call? Do you have dependents? Are you raising your grandchildren? Are you responsible for a disabled adult child? Who's the emergency caretaker for those individuals or that individual? So all these things here, these are the people that are going to step in when you're incapacitated, or you fell and broke a hip, you're in a car accident, whatever. There's a million different emergencies. You could have a stroke, you could have a heart attack, whatever. These names here are the people that need to know what happened and are going to take action. And again, that emergency contact may be calling these people, because you can't put everybody down all the time. So you need to make a funnel approach. So if you have a healthcare surrogate, yes, no, here's the phone number. Make sure your healthcare surrogate is someone that's going to be able to look at your living will, who understands what it says. You've met with them, you've talked with them. It doesn't have to be your oldest adult child. It has to be the person that's going to implement your wishes via your living will. And if you have a DNR, you need to, have a copy of it in the vial. There's no reason not to. Or have a copy of it somewhere with the person that's the healthcare surrogate. So you're going to put all this information in here. Be sure you have a living will. If you don't have a living will, email me. I can send you examples. You can Google living will. If you don't live in Florida, you can Google it in your state. And usually the Elder Services Department of Elder Affairs in your state will have examples that are appropriate for where you live. And you should have a living will. You should talk about what your wishes are and make sure that the healthcare surrogate knows what those are. Don't surprise them. And don't just pick the person that's, my oldest child or my husband or your next closest living relative. You want to pick the person that's going to be able to sit down with you, have a conversation, understand what your wishes are, and be able to execute that. There's nothing worse than making the decisions in an emergency and, awful to say, but the term pulling the plug or saying yes or no to treatment, those kinds of things are awful to do. And you don't want to do them lightly. But if somebody knows what your living will said and they understand that that's what you want, it's going to be much easier for them. Your DPOA or POA, the financial decision maker, they could also be a healthcare POA or DPOA. Your POA and your DPOA end at death. So you're also going to need to make an executor. So they can make decisions as long as you're alive, but as soon as you're not alive, there needs to be someone to take over. If you have an attorney, if you have pets, there's also an emergency pet slide that's similar to a Vial of Life for your pets and how to prepare for a disaster for your pets. Email me. I'll send that to you. It's important to think about our pets. A lot of people have pets. Your veterinarian. If your animal has to get boarded, they're going to need shots, verification of shots, if there's medication, when do you give heartworm medicine, all that sort of thing. You want to put on here. Excuse me. And dependents. If you have adult children, the emergency caretaker, or grandchildren, you need to know who is going to take care of them when you can't. Who can step in? Okay, this section is about medications. If you have medications, I recommend you go to the pharmacy and get a list of your medications. When your medications change, go to the pharmacy and get a new list. They'll do it over the phone even now, and sometimes you can do it over the web. So if you have multiple medications, I recommend as an insurance agent that you get your medications at the same pharmacy. That way you can get the list and it's complete. And when you filled it last, because people have a lot of medications in their home and it's like, oh, I only take this when I need it, or when I'm going on a plane trip or something. Well, people don't know that. There's 30 bottles of pills, but you only really take 12. The rest of them are there for those special cases. So if you get a list from your pharmacy, they'll be able to see when it was last filled in an orderly fashion, and it'll be much cleaner and easier. I know you can also sometimes save money by going to multiple pharmacies. What I would do is, instead of writing in your medications here, I would get those lists if you have to get them from multiple pharmacies due to the cost factor. I would get the multiple lists, but I would write here, what pharmacy do you use as your primary pharmacy? Um, so I use the Walmart on the corner of blah, 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 and blah, 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 or I use the CVS on the corner of blah, blah, and blah, blah. So at least we're pointing people in the right direction, and the slip is in there. You know, every time you get a medication change, you get a new list, and just throw out the old one, put in the new. Medication locations, you know, sometimes we do things to make it easier on ourselves. So I brush my teeth in the morning when I wake up, and I take my pills that are in the bathroom. And then in the evening, I take my pills with dinner, and the pills are in the kitchen. And then at night when I'm watching TV, I take my 8 o'clock pills, and they're by my chair. So if you have your medications in multiple places, you want to put a little note on here. You can write on the back, put an arrow. Morning meds are in the bathroom. Evening meds are in the living room by my chair. My dinner meds are in the kitchen. Any kind of information like that will help people understand what your system is, because you're unable to communicate it. If you know your blood type, if you're an organ donor, that'll be on your driver's license as well if you make a copy of that. Allergies. Medication allergies, food allergies, any kind of allergies, environmental, you know, list those. Okay, here's where we're getting down to the nitty and the gritty. We have all your medications, and the EMTs walk in the door, and the first thing they're going to say is, what happened? And then they're going to start asking questions about the person that's in the crisis or in the situation. What meds are they on? What allergies do they have? What medical conditions do they have? So this here is going to allow them to triage the situation and cut through the noise, so they can identify, is this a stroke or is this normal for them to be unable to speak? Is, you know, they can't hear me. Is it because they had a stroke, or are they dazed and confused, or are they deaf? Or are they blind? So these are all things that help the situation. If they're seizing, if they have dentures, that's a scary thing. You can swallow your dentures and choke to death. You know, they just being aware of that can be helpful. So you can read here, you know, mobility devices. You know, if they try to get you up to walk and you always have a walker or you always have a cane, but this night you left your cane or your walker in the bedroom, you walked in the kitchen and fell, you hit the, you know, the medical alert button on you, or you grabbed your phone or on the way down, or you had your cell phone in your pocket and you call 911, I can't get up, and then you're confused and disoriented. They don't know that you left your walker in the bedroom because they can't go traipsing through your house. But if they see here that you're supposed to have a walker and there's no walker around, they can deduce in their minds, oh, she must have forgot her walker, and so she fell. So maybe, you know, it's not a bigger issue than simply that. And if you're confused or disoriented and unable to communicate, that's going to help them figure all that out. Obviously, these medical conditions, if they're going to inject you with something, or they're going to treat you, or take some tests when they first arrive, EMTs do so much now. They do what emergency rooms used to do years ago. It's amazing. So they need to know, do you have a pacemaker? Have you had a stroke? Do you have asthma? Do you have arthritis? So it's very painful when they move you. Are you anemic? Do you have anemia? So if you're anemic, they know that that's, you know, something that you deal with. Glaucoma, epilepsy for seizures, all diabetes. Diabetes is a big one, because if you have diabetes, there's all kinds of issues that and things that they need to be concerned about. So if you have any of these things, you need to document it. And if there's more information that you have, more issues that you have, that are not listed, you need to put an arrow and write it on the back of the form. So, how was that? I'm trying to get through this as quick as possible, but provide you information that's important as you fill out these forms and to understand why it's important. When the EMTs come to your house, if they have this information at their fingertips, they're going to be able to act quickly. Minutes can matter when you have a stroke or a heart attack. I'm available to do community presentations, which generally you go into it a little longer. A web presentation, you've got to keep it short. So spread the word about the Brevard County Fire Rescue Vial of Life program. If your homeowners association would like to have a presentation, a lot of homeowners associations we're trying to reach out to and have them buy the Vial of Life for their community, so their entire community is covered. We can do a presentation for the homeowners association. The vials are about 50 cents each when we buy them in bulk, so we try to buy them in big batches. And anyway, that's it on that. Unfortunately, you can't ask questions. You can email me, you can call me, you can go to my website. Again, my name's Karina Savella. I'm with the Brevard Community Healthcare Coalition, and I am also part of the Community Services League of Brevard. And I thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you spread the word and have a great